Welcome, dear listeners, to the Speak and Flow podcast, where we share unique experiences to help you unlock and unleash your leadership voice. Today, we have Janet Uhrig, who is an HR director at Pima Community College. She has over 20 years in human resources. So glad you're here. Hi, Janet.
Hi, Melinda. So lovely to be with you today.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited about this topic. So let's dive in because you pride yourself in change and helping organizations move through change. And I mean, this is, if there's change, if there's nothing constant, change is constant, right? And probably even more so with all the technology happening. And so organizations really need, and leaders need to perk up their ears on how do we effectively manage this. And you've done this quite a bit within organizations to help leaders.
Yes, so I'm a certified senior professional in human resources, like you mentioned, with over 20 years of experience. And currently my role really encompasses some strategic leadership policy, talent management, employee relations, and making sure that our strategic goals are aligned with the college. And really just fostering a positive, productive workplace.
Yeah, building that productive, positive culture within the organizations, the public sector. And so with all the change that's going on, what do you think is one of the most challenging things that leaders have around communication?
Such a good question. Well, some of the major challenges I've seen across my career has really been ensuring clear communication between departments and across the organization. A lot of times organizations will, even within their own departments or divisions, have its own jargon and priorities, right? Sometimes can be competing. So some instances of misunderstanding or misaligned expectations can hinder dynamics. And so really making sure that you're developing communication strength, like standardizing communication channels, even within the organization. And of course, active listening is one of my favorite tools.
Yeah, so they're having challenges with clear communication because there's so much going on and different priorities and people, there's misunderstandings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how do we develop those clear communication channels? And then what about the transparency, when things are happening, having authentic, transparent conversations? What do you think about that? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that it's especially important when it can be shared. I know you and I had previously talked about what's appropriate to share in HR, and it's interesting because a lot more than you think in terms of course, the opportunity to be transparent. So some of that starts at the very beginning with communicating your vision and mission of the organization, making sure that you're having, especially managers are having regular check-ins with their employees, making sure that you provide open forums where employees can voice their concerns and creating that psychologically safe environment. So that really encourages two-way communication is how to start that.
And how do you, so let's say I'm a leader and there's a change about to happen. What is the best way to go about doing that?
And initially, right, there's going to be some what's widespread concern about job security and changes in roles. And so the initial communication, if you're going through a reorganization or the opportunity to shift or any kind of change, is to make sure you're dedicating communication task force. And that can include folks from different departments and different levels, so that you are ensuring that kind of transparent, timely, empathetic communication throughout the process of change.
Right.
Some of those, sorry.
Yeah, what happens? I mean, I love the idea of a task force, right? The more people in your team that can share the information appropriately, the better. And what happens? How can I know what to share and what? I mean, what if there are I'm doing a reorg and there's some employees I'm about to lay off. I can't share that. How would I, as a leader, know what to share and what not to share?
I think early and often communication is important, especially when you're talking about budget, right? The opportunity to partner with, in human resources, a lot of times we're not or staffed to ensure that we control the budget. And so working with your financial team to make sure that you're transparent about where the status and where the projections are, because
Right,
then the organization will know, oh, we're going to have to look at what we can do together and that planning ahead, so that you're not waiting last minute to kind of,
right,
again, encourage kind of fear and confusion about job security. A
right,
lot of times in organizations, especially at PIMA, we really try to make sure that there's regular updates. We're a little bit different in terms of organization because we have a publicly elected board. And so making sure it's required of us at the state level to make sure we're having transparent, open communication through those meetings. But many organizations, even without that kind of oversight, can do that through regular updates about through either emails, or I know a lot of organizations like town hall meetings, question and answer sessions, the opportunity to keep everyone informed about the progress and what to expect next.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And have you seen the companies actually be successful at this?
I have.
Really?
There's a couple of different organizations, right? I've seen a lot of opportunities where you kind of go down the wrong turn,
Yeah,
where you're not regularly updating, and it feels like a surprise to
yeah,
individuals, and so that's harder
right,
to control, right? The best people will often leave those organizations, and then you're left with the opportunity to figure out how am I going to staff in addition to keep and retain folks. And so
yeah,
that can be challenging, and one of the ways especially managers can have an impact is to make sure that they are having those one-on-one discussions with their team members, addressing those individual concerns. And a lot of times it's providing personalized support and
mhm.
um, as it relates to leading that team.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Again, you said being curious and willing to listen. And what if like you've done that? You've listened and they still don't want to do the change, their resistance to the change. Have you seen leaders be really successful to helping people overcome their resistance?
I like to say that you're engaging your ostriches, right? Right. Change is going to happen whether they like it or not. And
Right.
the opportunity for folks to stick their head in the sand and
Yeah.
say, no, no, I don't want to do this.
Right.
You have to then be more intentional and provide some of those feedback loops, right? Especially when we're talking about communication, a lot of times engaging those ostriches to make sure that what are their concerns, how can and engaging them to help problem solve that. A lot
Yeah.
of times working with the harshest critics in the organizations can
Yeah.
be helpful, right? Because that feedback is important. So how do we address feedback? How do we address those subsequent communications to ensure that you can alleviate, and then those folks can become your biggest change agents. And so I've seen success in really engaging, instead of leaving them off to on the side of the road, if you will, really
Right.
engaging them and bringing them along to help you solve those problems. I
Uh-huh.
found has been really helpful for organizational change.
Interesting. Interesting. Because I would have thought that it would be, hey, get the allies, get the people that are at the tipping point, the people that are really resistant, spending so much time on them, it could be quite daunting.
It
If,
can. I think the opportunity, right? The nice thing about folks who are ready and willing to change is they're
yeah,
gonna make it happen. And
right.
so sharing the information freely, explaining those decisions is easy. But when those decisions, a lot of times folks are the uncertainty of why those decisions are being made, and so helping explain the reasoning behind them, and maybe they're hearing it in a way that you hadn't thought about it. So right, neurodiversity can be, maybe that's an issue for some of the communication, and so thinking about, well, if I explain it in a different way, what
Mhm.
are some of the context that helps reduce the speculation that maybe is really the stem or problem that folks are having with the
Right,
information.
right, right. So digging real deep about what is the resistance that they're, because I think a lot of times when leaders communicate change, they have, oh, here are the key 5 things that you're concerned about, and that's everybody. And even if it's something similar, it's really listening to the person's story. Where's it coming from? Giving them that opportunity to express it and then seeing how, like you said, maybe there's ways that we can problem solve together.
I
I love
think yeah, especially encouraging that two-way communication. Not
yeah,
only is the manager or the employee, active listening, right? They're able to, like you said, share their thoughts, share their concerns, but you're then showing them that you value their input and
yeah.
the opportunity then to another way to enact that is that typical open door policy, right? If they are going to feel comfortable expressing their concerns, that you'll be able to engage their issues and questions. And so the
Mhm.
other piece of that is making sure you're having consistent communication, right? It's one thing, I think you mentioned a little bit earlier, to have that kind of deep dive, but that can be applicable across the organization, and regular updates, right, can help mitigate some of those change fears.
Yeah. So whenever an organization or team is going through any change, you got to triple your communication. I mean, you thought you're already communicating.
It's that I think that's the biggest thing. Organizations will feel, oh, well, we've already told them, right? The
Yeah.
average human needs to hear something 3 to 7 times, I think the research says. And so
Yeah.
communicating is not necessarily a bad thing when it comes to change.
Right, right. No, it's not. And communicating at different perspectives, different their stories, statistics, visuals, different modes, email, town hall meetings, one-to-ones.
Right. And like you mentioned earlier, the transparency and challenge. So really
Yeah,
when the organization is facing that challenge, be upfront about it.
yeah.
Make sure that and if you can explain what's happening, why it's happening, and then how you plan to address it. And if you're open to suggestions, getting those suggestions from the team and saying, well, let's get the suggestions. We'll talk about what does that really mean in implementation. And
Mhm,
then thinking about, well, here's what we can do.
mhm,
Often organizations will be stuck in terms of funding or the opportunity to create change, right? If there's a move that has to happen, a
mhm.
lot of times those are going to be the standardized kind of things that you have to do, but then how you address it and how you work through it together can help build some trust with the employees.
Right, right. So, and I'm sorry that the last statement that you said, working through together, is that what you said? The audio went out in and out a little bit, but that's okay. I can hear most of it.
Great.
Oh, is that what you said? That you're
It
working
is.
together on
Yeah.
this? Yeah. And so my last question is this so juicy and we can go on for probably 5 episodes. You mentioned that you're involved with DEI efforts. How has that been? How do people I mean, we're still rolling out a lot of DEI and DEIB, I hear nowadays, diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging, which is awesome. How has that change been like for organizations?
Well, even across the country, I think that
Right
some
there.
states are having some challenges in those areas. Our organization and institution is one that is committed to that engagement and importance, right? The opportunity for not just our student population, but our employee population to show up and be seen and
Mhm,
feel like they belong. And so the opportunity to really, I think it's really leading by example and demonstrating transparency in the communication is what helps that belonging and the opportunity to have folks be able to show up and be seen for who they are and what they contribute to the organization is important. And so, in terms of belonging, diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives,
mhm,
I think in terms of organizational, right, so much of human resources has been gatekeeping, and
mhm,
sometimes that can be helpful in organizations, and sometimes it can be harmful in communities. And so thinking about ways to create systemic change around diversifying the workplace, providing training and resources,
mhm,
the opportunity to have transparent processes. Those
mhm,
are all ways that human resource professionals can help in those areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
mhm. Wow, you have a lot. you have a big role and such an important one, especially in our communities and our colleges today. I mean, I did say that you were HR director, but like I hear how you do so much more in terms of talent management and employee retention. And so really kudos to you for doing
Yeah.
all of that. It's a lot of effort, but I think it's paying off. I know it's paying off with all the students and the staff and the faculty and the families. So thank you so much for sharing that, Janet.
I appreciate your time, Melinda. I love the work that you do and all of your webinars and podcasts and your
Oh, thank you.
opportunity and training. So thank you for all that you do. It's really important work.
Let's continue to do it. Let's continue to raise our leaders, bring people together, and yeah, celebrate our unique differences. Celebrate all of our special strengths that each of us have. So thank you so much, Janet. And I trust the listeners got so much out of this episode. I know that there's a lot more that we can cover. Maybe someday Janet can come back and dive deeper into change management. But until then, take care all. Much love to you. See you soon. Bye, Janet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. Are you curious on how you measure up with your ability to speak in flow? Come grab my free self-assessment at https://speakinflow.com/assessment. And I'll see you on the other side.